Hi my lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry that the background isn't quite as aesthetically pleasing as when you see my sideboard behind me with all of my ornaments on it. But I need the light on, and I think if I sit at the other end of the table where I usually sit to make my videos with the mirror behind me, you can see the light, and I think that might be slightly distracting for some people. So I'm running out of time to film this video, so I've had to do it in the evening, and yeah, I just thought I would switch to the other end of the table, if that's okay for you on this occasion. So if you've not been here before, my name is Sharon. I am 62 years old, almost 62 and a half years old. And I started this channel back at the end of January, just purely to document my own personal budgeting journey, because almost 2.5 years ago now, I had a change in circumstance, which was my own decision, but I moved out of the home that I was living in and rented a property. So yeah, my financial situation is much changed to how it previously was. So without further ado, let us get into today's video. So there are lots of things that I could call this particular video. It sort of is financial advice, but I'm no financial expert. I don't pretend to be. This is more about my own experience, or things that I wish I had learnt sooner, thought about when I was younger. Lots of things are still relevant for women who may be nearer to my age group, but there's also advice in the 5 tips that I'm giving that will be suitable for much younger women in very different circumstances to my own. But I think if there is one tip out of the 5 that just makes you think about things and how you can plan for your future no matter what age you are, then I would be really, really happy with that. So it's a broad spectrum of tips, or 5 tips for, you know, some aimed at different age groups, but in general, something for everybody, I feel. I'm always thinking about money and finances and budgeting and that kind of thing. And I also think a lot about my future. And I think, you know, I've mentioned it a few times on here, how I worry for my future. I worry about my financial stability. I worry about whether the rent were to go up on the property that I'm living in, because I'm so comfortable here. I really like it. I've got a small garden, which I really appreciate. So yeah, there's just sort of so much always going on in my head. And I try not to overthink things, because in some respects, I think you've just got to live through today. If you can get through today, you know, if you can make a dinner out of what you've got in the freezer or in the fridge or in the cupboards, then get through today. You know, tomorrow's a new day. But there's also that part of me that thinks, you know, we need to look ahead, and we need to plan for when we're this age, really. So yeah, this is what I've written down. So bear with me. Hopefully you can take something from it. But this is kind of what I wish I knew when I was younger, really, I'm guessing. But as I say, there's always time to make changes if necessary. So my first bit of financial advice would be to have an emergency fund. An emergency fund, I mean, it's like it is what it says on the tin, really, isn't it? It's for emergencies. So things like unexpected expenses, or think about loss of earnings. The other thing that I was also thinking about was the fact that, say, for example, two of my son-in-laws, they lost their dads at quite a young age. That left their mums on their own. So thinking about, you know, God forbid anything ever happens to anybody, but, you know, this is real life, and sometimes things will happen to your partner or to your husband. So having, as a woman, your own emergency fund, some backup money or some savings that you have got there, which can just turn out to be a nest egg if they're not required, but just to give you a little bit of financial security, because none of us know what is round the corner. So I would definitely have built an emergency fund. And I wish somebody had told me to do so many, many years ago. The next thing on my list, which will sound very kind of specific, is a getaway fund. Now, to me, this is something that I feel every woman should have, no matter how happy she might currently be. Because nobody knows what is round the corner. Nobody gets married thinking that that marriage isn't going to work out. Nobody moves in with a partner thinking that they're not going to perhaps one day get married and stay together for the rest of their lives. Or maybe they don't want to get married, but if you're moving in with somebody, it's a massive financial commitment, and hopefully that all works out. But it doesn't always. Now, I had built, and I've mentioned it many times, I had a furniture fund and I had a getaway fund, but it was only something that I'd started to save up in more recent years. And I honestly think you should have enough money saved in a getaway fund for a couple of months' rent, a deposit on a rental property, and some furniture should you need it. And again, if you never need that money and you are in a very happy, stable relationship for the rest of your life, fantastic. You know, go to the Maldives or Barbados or have the trip of a lifetime with that money if you never need it. But when I moved in here, I paid 3 months rent in advance and I paid my deposit, and I had my furniture fund, which I've mentioned before, was just over £1,000. And again, if you've got a getaway fund, you don't have to call it that, because it is like another emergency fund, but a little bit more specific. It's for you if you need to get away from the circumstances that you are in. And I pray that every one of you listening to this video never ever find yourself in that position. But some of us do, and some of you unfortunately will. Hopefully not you who are watching this right now. But again, if you don't ever need it, that's fantastic. Spend it on something else. But seriously think about having a little bit of money aside from an emergency fund, that if you needed to get away, you've got some money to fall back on, because you just never know what is round the corner. The next one, of course, this is a big one, and it plays on my mind so much now. And when you're in your 20s and 30s and even your 40s, you know, do you really think about retirement, about building a nest egg for the future, or having a private pension if you haven't got one with your current job, or even if you have, what's it going to be worth to you when you get to retirement age? So it's definitely something I wish I had had drilled into me, because up until what, late 40s, early 50s would it have been? I always thought I would be retired at the age of 60. I never thought any further ahead than that. I never dreamed I would be living like I am now, in a rented house with, yes, I've got a private pension now, with the job that I've currently got, but I've only been in this job for 3 years. I've got one other pension from a job I was only in for a year and I lost because of COVID. And the value of that, I think I mentioned it at the time when I phoned up and found out about it, was £500. That is all. You know, I've got nothing. I've got no private pensions, and it's scary. So I urge anybody at any age that if you are in a position now to make provision for retirement and plan for your future or your golden years, whatever you want to call it, then definitely give it some thought. Do not end up like I am, wondering what's going to happen in 5 years' time when I finally reach state pension age. You know, I thought I would not be working now, and I am working. And I'm bitter about that because I want to have more time to spend with my family, time to spend with my grandchildren. You know, we're here for a good time, not a long time, and creating memories and spending time with them is really important to me. But it's just not possible when you're working. So I'm absolutely gutted that there was not provision made, even when state pension age was changed. If I'd have had pensions in place that would have matured when I was 60 years old, my circumstances now might be a little bit different. Maybe I could drop down some hours or something like that to give me some more time. So definitely, no matter what age you are, plan for your retirement. Check what you've got with your current employer. If you have got a private pension, you know, look into it. Keep on top of these things would be a definite bit of advice that I would give. And the fourth one would be to manage any debts if you've got any. And the reason I say that, because I was thinking back to the 5.5 years that I had as a single mum with 3 little girls between my two marriages. And I can remember that I did get into debt at that time. And I remember that I struggled to sort it out purely because I was too afraid to make the phone calls. I don't know what I thought people were going to do to me, but I was absolutely petrified of dealing with the situation. And I can remember my friend, who I know is watching this because only a couple of my friends know about my YouTube channel. She came to my house and she made the phone calls for me. And although I was listening to everything that was said, and that was fine, and those people thought she was me and everything got sorted out, the fact that I didn't do it was a massive relief to me. But you have to deal with it head on. Not everybody's got a friend that can come and make those phone calls for you, and neither should they. You know, I should have been, you know, brave enough to make those calls myself, because in hindsight, what were they going to do? Nobody can take money from you that you haven't got. You know, there are things out there like debt management plans where companies will look at your incomings and your outgoings and maybe come to some agreement with you privately. Or even if you struggle with sorting that out, like I should have done back in the day maybe, was go to Citizens Advice, because they are always there to help. So please don't ever bury your head in the sand. If you have got debts, don't be afraid. If you can't make those calls yourself, go to Citizens Advice to get things sorted. I know there are other charities around now, but it's not something I've looked into. But we all know that Citizens Advice is there for us, and they will give you the best advice and act on your behalf in those circumstances. So on that basis, I can only recommend them. And then for my final one, and this really is for much younger women, I would say have a maternity fund. So if you at any point in the future are planning on having a family, then definitely start saving for that scenario. So there's quite a few sinking funds if you're younger you could have here, or different accounts with different savings in. But the reason that I say a maternity fund is because specifically, again, this has been on my mind recently. My middle daughter, for example, she works for the NHS. And although you can have a year off when you've had a baby, only part of that is paid in full. Then I think you get a percentage, and then you end up on statutory maternity pay. And I know my middle daughter has struggled when she's had her 2 children on those occasions when she has been receiving SMP. So I would advise anybody to plan for those times, because I also think it's very easy to think that you will go back to work after 6 months. But who really wants to leave their baby when they can be at home with them for a year? That first year of a baby's life is so, so important. And you might find thinking you would go back at 6 months. When that time comes, you actually don't want to. And if you haven't got a backup plan or any money to see you through the next 6 months until you go back to work, it could be a massive financial strain on your circumstances. And I honestly do think if there's one thing that causes trouble in marriages or civil partnerships or whatever they may be, it's money. It's always, always money. So nobody needs that pressure. So again, even if you are saving money yourself in a fund for those times, then do so. And if you don't want children ever, then completely ignore tip number 5. It may not be for you. But this would be advice that I would be giving my younger self. I've had kids. I've gone back to work afterwards. It was very, very different when I had mine. It was really, when I had the girls, it was 3 months off before. Now everybody works up to about a fortnight before they're due to give birth, and they have much longer off after the baby is born than we used to back in the day. But I went back to work after each of my daughters. I did not go back to work after having my son because I worked in London. My mum looked after my children. She was my child carer. And when I told her I was expecting my 4th child, I saw her face change and I said, "Don't worry, Mum, I won't be going back to work in London," because I had an extremely long day with my commute. But if it hadn't have been for my mum, I wouldn't have been able to continue to work, and I wouldn't have been able to continue when I was on my own, for example, for 5.5 years. I would not have been able to work and pay my mortgage if it wasn't for my mum. And not everybody is as lucky enough to have that in place as I was. And when I talk about my middle daughter, unfortunately, she doesn't even live in the same county as me. So I'm unable to give any childcare support, and she's now got 2 children going to nursery. Her nursery fees are extortionate. So if you're watching this and you are young or you've got daughters, speak to them about it. As we say, none of this stuff is taught in school. We find it all out as we go along. Budgeting is so important. Financial freedom is so important. Planning for your future and for your retirement is so important. But nobody teaches you this. We can get information now from YouTube and people talking about money like myself, or Instagram, and that's how people consume this kind of information now. But really, so much of this should be taught in schools because it is so, so important. And I've said many a time, I'm all for women supporting women, and I believe women should feel empowered. Women should have financial freedom, not sitting around at the age of 62 thinking, what am I going to be doing in 5 years' time when I draw my state pension? And I wouldn't want that for any of you at all. So if there's just one bit of advice from those 5 tips that you get a little takeaway from, then I am more than happy about that. So it all sounded very serious, didn't it? No spider stories today or anything crazy that's happened. But I do like to have a bit of a money chat video for a Sunday. And I will be back on Wednesday, guys. So I have been documenting my dinners this week. So everything I've been eating, I've videoed. And there's some recipes in there as well, or recipes showing you what I've made and how I've made it, what I've used up. You know, we've used up some things that we didn't really want. We've used up some odds and ends from the freezer to create some meals. The shopping, a couple of very small shops, because I think next week will be the final week of the shopping cycle. So the payday to payday budget for the food. We're coming to the end of that. There's hardly any money left now. So I've had to be really careful with what I've bought this week. And you'll see all that on Wednesday. So I hope to see you there. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend if you're watching this on Sunday morning. Take good care of yourselves, guys. And I will see you on Wednesday. Don't forget to like, subscribe. And, talking about money, I need to tell you that my voice is going. No, that's not what I was going to say. As of today, we have earned £38 on YouTube. So thank you so much for everybody who watches my videos, who likes, who comments, who is subscribed, even if you don't like and comment, because that is all helping to build that money up. And I know that they, YouTube or AdSense, whatever it is, they don't pay you. You have to have earned £60. So if I can earn £60 in May, then hopefully it'll be a little bit more than that. I know that I would receive that at the end of June. I think that's how it works. I have to now upload a PIN number, which has come through the post today, I assume, because I've got a letter that I've not had chance to open yet, which has got Google written on it. So I think that's the 4-digit PIN that I need to verify my address. And I think the next step after that may be to put some payment details in. I will find out. But yeah, £38. So that is amazing. It's £38 that I wouldn't have had. And I just really hope that the channel continues to grow. And if there's any kind of content over here that you think other people might be interested in, then to share with others would be amazing. So yeah, thank you all so much for your continued support. You know, it means the absolute world to me. And who knows, maybe this YouTube channel could well be me planning for my future. You never know. I will see you on Wednesday, guys. Take good care. Bye-bye now.